Motoring 2008 on TSN is brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
You know, the high cost of fuel is the hot topic these days, and most people are not happy about it. But here on Motoring, we think the universe is unfolding as it should. I mean, everybody wants a clean environment, but few are willing to change their lifestyle to achieve it until now. And these high costs are now forcing people to take a second look at the kind of vehicle they are driving. I mean, General Motors finally gets it. They're cutting back on SUV and pickup production. So, you know, you'd think it's a really odd time to introduce a brand new sport utility vehicle, right? Well, maybe not, because we're here in beautiful downtown Montreal, and this is the place that Honda has chosen to introduce its new SUV, and it's a second generation Pilot.
Pilot was first introduced about 4 years ago. It was our first foray into the intermediate sports utility vehicle market. We sold about 4,000 or 5,000 Pilots a year for the last 4 years, and we've been very, very pleased with the results.
Okay, the Pilot has been successful for Honda, but you know, people are moving away from bigger vehicles, and they say life is all about timing, and you could suggest the timing on this new Pilot is, well, questionable.
No, not at all, Brad. I think the timing is perfect for this particular vehicle. There is a market for an 8-seater sports utility vehicle, no doubt. So this is the perfect time to bring out the perfect vehicle, and we believe that because all of the attributes are best in class, that we will sell this vehicle into this marketplace.
It's unfortunate timing for the Pilot. When they started this project, which is probably at least 2 years ago, everything was moving in a make it bigger, make it tougher, make it stronger. They've done that, not hugely, but the market has suddenly shifted. So with gas prices, with truck sales going in the toilet, this can't be good for them.
What are you to do? I think replacement for this vehicle was underway probably, years ago, and when it was being planned and developed, this would have been the right time to do it. Now it comes out, and as you say, maybe people are looking for more small fuel-efficient vehicles, given the high price of fuel. But there still is going to be a market for larger SUVs.
Okay, so Honda is convinced there is a need for this kind of vehicle, but what about rising fuel prices? Well, they've addressed that by introducing something called the VCM, Variable Cylinder Management, a way of deactivating cylinders. Other companies have done it with a V8, but Honda is the first company to take a 6-cylinder engine and allow you to run it on 6, 4, or 3 cylinders.
Variable cylinder management means that as you're driving, the vehicle senses your driving conditions and will deactivate cylinders depending on the load requirements. So in some cases you'll be driving in 3-cylinder mode. Other cases you need a little bit more power, so you're in 4-cylinder mode. Or if you're under hard acceleration, you're obviously in 6-cylinder mode. So by balancing all that, it gives you the best performance that's required while giving you good gas mileage as well.
If you're going to go with a 6 or 7-seater, going with a Honda engine is not a bad idea, especially this one, because the ability to shut down 2 or 3 of the cylinders when the engine load is light over the period of a year or so, it's going to save an awful lot of gas. It really is a good idea, and I think you see it on some of the big V8s from the North American manufacturers, but nobody does it on a 6, and nobody does it quite as well as Honda.
It is an 8-passenger, so it really is designed around the family's needs, but it obviously is not a minivan. And I think that was the key from a design standpoint, from a styling standpoint. We really wanted to give it a sense of adventure, a sense of security while you're taking it where you want to go. If you're taking it into the hills to go to the cabin, towing a boat behind it, whatever, we really wanted to make sure that it gave you a good sense of adventure.
The vehicle's got a really terrific ride, I think. I found it very comfortable to drive. It's quite maneuverable, even though it's large. They call it an intermediate-sized vehicle. It's pretty big.
Overall, the vehicle is about 3 inches or 75 millimeters longer than the current Pilot. The wheelbase accounts for all of that. It's 75 millimeters longer than the current Pilot. Overall, we've kept the same front overhang, rear overhang, and we've made it a little bit wider, about 30 millimeters wider, to give people on the inside a little bit more shoulder room.
What Honda's done with the Pilot this time around is they have fixed a lot of little things. They have talked to their customers and they've given them small conveniences that they've asked for, a little more room here, pop-out glass there, a cup holder. These are important things for consumers, but there is nothing stunning about the new Pilot.
Our powertrain is our 3.5 liter VCM engine, and it's a derivative of the Accord model that's currently in production. On the inside, we focus a lot on the package. We wanted to really make it friendly for the family, and especially for all seats. So first row, second row, and third rows, we really wanted to improve not only the appearance, but the flexibility and the comfort level.
Can they sell it?
Honda has an incredibly strong following, and they will be counting on that.
I think they will. There are a lot of people that, as I say, need 6, 7 and 8 seats and or the towing capacity, and this thing's got a 4,500 pound towing capacity, which is pretty good for that sort of vehicle. If you have a need, you've got no option.
You know, plants actually grow better when there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So maybe we've got this environmental thing all backwards. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
Many moons ago, BMW sold the 2002. This week on Test Drive, its spiritual successor. This is the 1 Series. The reason the old 2002 has such a soft spot in any driving aficionado's heart is its sheer fun. The fact it was a blast to drive and did not cost an arm, leg and firstborn to purchase also helped the cause. The 1 Series picks up on these likeable traits and fast forwards them into the modern era. Slip behind the wheel of the 1 Series and you will not be disappointed. To begin with, everything is logically laid out and there's no iDrive. That means you don't need a computer science degree to change the radio station. The other thing, they did not cut corners when it came to the interior. This is every inch of BMW and it's exactly as it should be. There is, however, one complaint. This cup holder. Any hot liquid in there gets dumped all over the passenger's left leg every time you accelerate hard. So do yourself a favour. Take it out, find the nearest trash can and drop it in. Power for the 1 Series comes from a choice of 2 engines. The 128 features a naturally aspirated 3-litre inline-6 that dishes out 230 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque in a totally seamless fashion. Marry it to the 6-speed manual box and the one scampers its way to 100k in just 6.4 seconds, which is more than enough to entertain. For the serious driver, however, the 135 is the order of the day. Bolting 2 turbos onto essentially the same engine ramps the power up to 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque, and it drops the acceleration time to a highly competitive 5.4 seconds. How sweet it is. The 1's biggest downfall is its back seat. There's very little headroom, next to no legroom, and it'll only hold 2 people because it doesn't have a center seat. The bottom line, this is where you put your briefcase and not your favorite mother-in-law. Where the 1 Series really begins to shine is when it's pushed. On the one hand, the suspension dials out practically all unwanted body motion, and so the response to driver input is fast without feeling twitchy. The pylon test became an exercise in futility, and simply because the 1 ran it as fast as anything ever tested. On the flip side, the highway ride is exemplary, with all but the biggest frost heaves sliding by unnoticed. Of all the manufacturers, only BMW manages to instill such a balanced act into one car. In North America, we're only going to get the 1 Series Coupe and its convertible sibling. In Europe, the lucky dogs, they get a 5-door hatchback. Now, BMW says that the buying public doesn't put premium and hatchback in the same sentence. Phooey. Of course they do, and if they brought the car over, it would sell exceptionally well. And while they're about it, they should bring over the diesel engine, because with gas prices going the way they are, there is room for a small,
practical, versatile, frugal mode of transportation, and the 1 Series 5-door hatchback, it fits that bill perfectly.
As for the rest of it, the 1 Series brings great anti-lock control brakes. Several full-on back-to-back stops produced an average stopping distance of just 37.6 meters and no evidence of brake fade whatsoever.
Nothing quite like BMW brakes.
Naturally, if the driver oversteps the line, the 1 Series has all the right electronic control systems to correct the wayward tendency. Dynamically, this car is an utter delight.
You know, there are very few cars in this world that can brighten a dank day. This 1 Series is one of them. Great power, great handling, wonderful brakes. It could do with a back seat, but if you get to sit up front, it is very comfortable. But what's most impressive of all? This vehicle is a legitimate BMW in spite of being affordable.
Michelin, a better way forward.
Okay, so the price of gas is going up. Well, we'd better get used to it and find ways to make that liter of fuel go further. Obviously, much of the emphasis is on engines with hybrids, electric, and so on. But these vehicles all share one common feature: tires. And tires can play a huge role in fuel economy with improved rolling resistance. What is rolling resistance? Well, simply put, it's the amount of energy it takes to move a vehicle and overcome that resistance. Like on a bike, pretend your legs are pistons. You can feel how much energy it takes to get that bike started. Well, tires account for about 20% of the energy necessary to move vehicles from rest. Right now, Michelin is leading an effort with the Rubber Manufacturers Association to establish government regulations in each country to create fuel economy labeling for cars and trucks.
It might be just a simple labeling system, almost like the Energy Star program in the United States. When you go to a local place to buy a new refrigerator, there's an Energy Star program. You can see what the energy consumption is for that product. And in very much the same way, you could have that type of label on a tire that would give you various levels of low rolling resistance. I think the big winner is consumers. Just as they're able to get information on fuel economy and other characteristics, they'll be able to get the same type of information when it comes to rolling resistance characteristics for a tire. And the lower the rolling resistance of a tire, the better the fuel efficiency. So the consumer is going to win.
Check out these numbers. Only a 10% reduction of rolling resistance for passenger car tires would save 2 billion gallons or 8 billion liters of fuel a year in the United States alone. That's like taking 4 million vehicles off the road. So not only will we reduce fuel consumption, but also cut down on carbon dioxide emissions. And we've been told that California could have a tire labeling system in place as early as 2009.
I don't know if it'll change the whole notion of how you sell a tire, but it'll give consumers more information. They'll have better information in which to make their decision as to what kind of tire they want.
On future programs, we'll give you some tips on finding a low-resistant tire. Make sure you check out Motoring's brand new website. Miss an episode or segment on TSN? Well, you can now watch it on the web. We also have a buyer's guide, Car of the Year poll, a photo gallery, the latest news, and much more. And it's all at motoringtv.com. Along with the new Pilot, Honda let journalists check out its new personal watercraft. It's called the Aquatrax. It's got a 1500cc, 4-cylinder, 4-stroke, intercooled turbo engine. And you ready for this? It's packing 200 horses. Well, you know, our man in the Quaker State Garage, Bill Gardner, is always nagging us, and rightly so, about maintaining our vehicles. But what about things like the Aquatrax? I mean, that doesn't come cheap, along with things like our lawnmowers and snowblowers. I mean, they must take some maintenance. How about it, Bill?
Well, Brad, you know what? My personal experience has been that if it's quote unquote a toy, guys are into maintaining those. It's just a labor of love. There's nothing neglected on the ski boat, on the fishing boat, on the motorcycle, whatever. But when it comes to a tool like this lawnmower or a chainsaw or something like that, sometimes they kind of lag behind in maintenance because it's just not quite the labor of love. Now, going back to the old standby in your car, the owner's manual for these small machines, always very user-friendly. Lots of specs in here, lots of do-it-yourself stuff. You go to your car manual, in a lot of cases it'll tell you to just take it into the dealer when you've got certain symptoms. Small machinery, lots of good information. Now, case in point, this Honda lawnmower is a couple of years old and hasn't had its first oil change yet. It's actually a little bit overdue. And just to show you, now a few years back on a lawnmower you had to go underneath the mower deck and take a drain bolt out to drain the crankcase oil. But on a newer mower like this one, it's as simple as just tilting the mower up on its edge, and we remove the dipstick where we fill the machine with oil. We take our oil drain pan, put it underneath, and just collect the waste motor oil right out of the crankcase and into the pan. It's that simple. Now, this machine only holds 0.55 of a liter of motor oil. It's very small crankcase capacity, so we don't want to run that too long. This probably should have had an oil change at the end of the first season, went a little bit past that, so it's overdue. We need to change it. Now, make sure whatever type of machinery you're maintaining that you do it according to the specs, just as you do with your car. And in most cases, you'll find that this small equipment like this, small machinery, be it motorcycle or lawnmower, whatever it is, it's pretty easy stuff to maintain. I mean, you don't need a jack, you don't need a hoist, you don't need a whole lot of tools. It's pretty simple stuff to do, so there's no excuse for neglecting this type of machinery. Make sure that your equipment's maintained. In most cases, even an inexpensive machine like this lawnmower, I think this is about a $350 lawnmower, lasts you indefinitely if you look after it. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2008.
The High Series Edge has a combination of technologies, some that are longer term, some that are shorter term viable. For example, the lithium-ion battery technology on the vehicle will find its way into vehicles in the showroom floor over the next few years. Longer term, the hydrogen fuel cell that propels the vehicle, that's going to take longer, more research, more development.
The first thing you've got to do is to clean up the gasoline engine. If it burns less gas, it produces fewer emissions, and therefore you start to address the problem right away. Now, if you go to 6-speed gearboxes instead of 4-speed and 5-speed, you can spread the power out over a broader range, you get better economy and therefore lower emissions. That's the near term. The longer term, as I say, it's going to be a hydrogen-based transportation infrastructure. Everything will use hydrogen. It's a very impressive piece. I've driven nearly all of the fuel cell vehicles there are on the planet to date. And what impresses me most is that if you go back to the early ones, there was no seamlessness to the drive. They were jerky, sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. The whole reliability thing was up in the air. As you get to newer and newer vehicles, the drive is becoming so seamless that if you stuck probably 90% of the driving population behind the steering wheel and took them for a drive, they wouldn't know the difference. The only thing they might notice, the lack of noise.
You know, what's really exciting about working on projects like this is we're part of the technical revolution that's occurring in the auto industry. And I like to compare this to perhaps the Apollo mission. The challenge is great to bring zero-emission vehicles to the consumer, but the payoff is just as dramatic.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2008 is brought to you by the all-new 2009 Pontiac Vibe for the drive of your life.
You want to do something good for the environment? Well, maybe you should buy the biggest, baddest SUV you can find and drive it real fast. The point is, use up all that oil, and then we can get on to the next best thing, which is going to be hydrogen. Now, earlier in the show, Graham drove that Ford Edge powered by hydrogen. I drove it as well. It's a well-refined vehicle. It looks great, goes beautifully. A couple of wee problems with it. It's hugely expensive because I've only built one of them so far, and it's also expensive to run because despite the increasing price of petroleum, it's still a lot cheaper than hydrogen. So if we use up all the oil, the price of it goes up, and eventually the economics start to make sense for hydrogen. Now, we're not exactly running out of oil. Theoretically, the Earth isn't making any more, but we're finding more and more of it. But it gets more and more expensive to find, and at some point, the price of hydrogen starts to become more equal. Maybe we end up with plantations in the Indian Ocean, solar-powered catalytic crackers that turn the seawater into oxygen and hydrogen. That could actually work. Now, it's not going to happen tomorrow. Some manufacturers are thinking maybe 2015, 2020. And I was kind of kidding about the SUV. But at some point, we're going to be driving hydrogen, and as far as I'm concerned, the sooner the better. I'm Jim Kenzie.
A few final thoughts on the new 2009 Honda Pilot. It's definitely larger than its predecessor. It comes with all the bells and whistles you'd expect in a Honda. As far as the design, well, it looks kind of boxy, but then what SUV doesn't? However, off the top of the program, we question why a manufacturer would bring out an SUV with fuel prices so high. Well, as we heard earlier, the reality is some people do need a larger vehicle for the family and all the stuff that comes with them. And as far as fuel economy goes, Honda is now the first company to take a 6-cylinder engine and allow you to run on 4 or 3 cylinders. So they've addressed that issue. But you know, there are a lot of people who think Honda is gambling and rolling the dice on the success of this Pilot. But remember, this is a company that thinks things out. They make few mistakes. In fact, it's taken them over 7 years to introduce this second-generation Pilot, so it was my money. I wouldn't be betting against them. Of course, Graham will have a much closer look on the Pilot on a future program. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
On occasion, we do get a bad rap being the large energy companies, but the amount of investment that goes back into sustainable development, Shell itself is investing like $23 billion a year back into developing future technologies, whether it's wind power, solar power, better lubricants, better fuels, to increase fuel economy, reduce the carbon footprint by all the consumers around the world.
Motoring 2008 on TSN has been brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses, and Michelin, a better way forward.